Hey, one more thing before you go. How can you be positive after tragedy? What do you do with your life when you lose a child at a very young age and in a tragic way? How do you find purpose again when you're a mother and a wife and not sure which direction to go after this tragic loss? Stay tuned. We're going to have a conversation with a woman who moved forward and to provide positive support and hope for others going through their grief journey. She's going to show you how she can help you if you're going through this loss as well. I'm your host, Michael Herst, and this is One More Thing Before You Go. My guest in this episode created, developed, and designed and currently facilitates a virtual grief peer support group. Hope Reger created this in honor of her son Justin, whose life was tragically cut short at the young age of 19. Her journey through this loss opened her heart to use the pain she experienced for a better purpose by creating an environment to provide positivity, inspiration, and hope to others. Grief to Hope is a virtual peer group support group that allows grievers a safe space to be their authentic self with support of others who understand and know exactly what they're going through. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I really appreciate your journey. I applaud you for where you have come from and where you're at now because you have created an environment for people to move through grief, which we all do at some point in our lives, move through grief in different ways. But thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for developing this program.
It is my pleasure. It's my way of honoring my son. I get to say his name probably 4 or 5 times a day to get to talk about him, get to talk about the program. So it's a win-win for me as well.
That absolutely. I mean, when we can, it's unique when we can hold the ones that we love that we lost in such a manner that it allows us to help others.
Absolutely. I say all the time that this program that came about with just the inspiration of getting out of bed, what was going to drive me to get out of bed, what was going to be a reason for me to honor my son and give back and create something amazing that people could use. And one of the things that I say all the time is when people are grieving or when people have traumatic things happen in their life, the greatest thing that comes out is they're the most giving people that you'll ever meet. And I think it's because we've experienced the lowest and the hardest pain
Mhm.
that you can experience in life, and especially when it's a tragic event, um, we understand the pain. And so
And
we're
that
the
helps.
first person to give, we're the first person to help, we're the first
Hmm.
person to go and see what's needed. So it's been an amazing learning experience for me as well.
Well, it's a journey. It's a life journey, and I like to start at the beginning, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a town, a little bitty town in Ohio, called Ludlow Falls, which is, I don't even know the population, but they were famous for their falls, which I don't think is there anymore. And then we moved around quite a bit when I was young, and several small towns. And as we sort of moved from small town Brookville, which is like the east side of Dayton, to Dayton, and then I finally made Xenia my home, and that's where I ended up meeting my son's father, and sort of that's what I call my hometown.
And you still live there now.
Yes, I just recently moved back here. Was able to work from home now through my work. So I'm currently back at home, what I consider home. I moved away for a short time in 2015. I moved to Columbus, Ohio for my job.
Mhm.
And then when COVID hit and everything changed and the world changed and we were able to work from home, then I was like, this is my opportunity to move back to my hometown and be closer to my son and my grandkids that live here.
You know, it's interesting. COVID obviously has its negatives, but it also had its positives. I think it allowed us to reset what might be normal, and working from home is a very good thing for a lot of people. My wife gets to do it 2 days a week. During COVID, she did it for almost 2 years. She stayed home and worked from home during that 2 year time period. Then went back on a hybrid, and it just makes the home environment so much better when we can be here a lot more instead of always at work. It's pretty cool. Did
I think it changed. Yeah, it changed it just changed the way that we feel about work. Like it's not as stressful. It's not the
Yeah.
commute. It's not coming home. It's not, you could throw a load of laundry in, or you can do dishes or lay out food that you would normally, be able to do. So it put a whole different dynamic on everything. And I completely agree. It changed a lot of our thoughts and
Yeah.
ideas and way of living.
I agree. My wife and I got the opportunity to have lunch every day and, get breakfast. Her commute for that 2 years was 30 seconds from the patio where we sit back and have tea first thing in the morning to the office. And then her commute home was like from there to the couch.
Right,
It
right.
was,
Mine was to the dining room and back. Yes, absolutely.
it works well. It does. Did you go to university?
No, I actually went straight from working or from high school. I went straight to working at a financial institution, and I just started from there. I was a young mother, straight out of high school, and I was able to grow within that company, and then lucky enough to be into the place that I work now. 26 years later. I'm still with that same company, just a major financial institution, and I get to bring on new hires and, just have that experience of training. And so it's really, really been rewarding.
That's outstanding. It gives a better quality of life when we can, enjoy what we do and, allow ourselves to live. You said your husband, and you met your
Uh-huh.
husband. Is it the? I'm gonna my if this question sometimes catches people. Um, have you stayed married? So is
So I've been married for 15 years and I was divorced in 2015. And then I met my now husband later in 15, or I'm sorry, in 14, got divorced in 15. And we have been together for 8 years, married for 4. And it was sort of like, as you get older, your mindset changes of
yeah,
how things are supposed to work. And so having that challenge, I think that first marriage taught me what didn't work, but what did work and what was good for it and what was bad for it. And so both of us together now, we've sort of understand what it takes to make a marriage work. And we are just truly best friends, and he is an amazing support of everything that I do, including Grief to Hope.
that's fantastic. Sometimes we need a practice marriage.
Yes, I
We'll,
had a
we'll,
practice marriage. You're absolutely right.
we'll call it a practice. I had a practice marriage, and now I'm married to my current wife. 33 years this month, actually, just a few days ago.
Oh,
Um, Thank
congratulations.
you. We have 2 wonderful children, and, my ex-wife we're still friends with my ex-wife, actually, which most people find kind of bizarre, but, I worked, as you know, I worked in the EMS, arena, as a law enforcement officer. My ex-wife is in EMT, worked for the fire department,
Okay.
back home, so, we stayed friends, and, she's got a kid, and now she's a grandmother. So, yeah, it's all cool. It's all about life. It's all about life.
Yeah.
Um
I think the greatest thing was is that we grew to the part where all the kids were grown because he had 3 and I had 2. And
mhm.
once they grew up, we were like, wow, maybe we don't like each other as much as we thought We did because we were occupied by the kids.
Uh,
So we still are very cordial. We don't hang out, but we are very cordial, and we
yeah,
have
we don't
meet
invite
up.
my ex-wife to dinner, but
Yeah,
it's one of those things that she says happy birthday and happy anniversary and stuff like that, and to my kids too, and we say it to her kids, and I spent. I know this is your journey, but I spent 4 years with a domestic violence task force in specific, and
wow.
it. We just understood that life does not have to be that way when you have an ex. You can be friends, you can be cordial, you spend a portion of your life together. We learned from that, and we move forward, like you did, like I did. We moved forward and created another environment. My ex-wife did, Janelle did. She moved forward and created another life, and it's positive. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have two beautiful daughters that are wonderful, absolutely the apples of my eye, as the old cliche says. She wouldn't have, a son and a granddaughter. So, it's life puts you where it's supposed to be. You don't always have to be mean to each other. Be nice. Just be
Yes.
nice. Well,
Yes.
part of your life story, you and I have some things in common. We all know that life can change in an instant. And in regard to that, you had something that happened on November 17th, 2016. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember around 6:30 in the morning, I woke up to a knock at the door, and I lived in a condo in Columbus at this time, and I went. I looked downstairs and I saw two police officers standing there, and I thought, "Oh no, what has that kid done?" And speaking of my 19-year-old who was spending time between me and from in our home in Xenia, not with his friends and back, he was doing that back and forth, and he was fearless, and so I thought, okay, he's gotten somewhere, doesn't have mom's number because he lost his cell phone or something happened. And when I opened the door, they asked if I was Justin's mom. So again, that reassured me it was Justin because I have an older son, who's 7 years older than Brian or Justin, named Brian. And they handed me a piece of paper, and it was just a simple notebook piece of paper that had a number and a name, and they said this person's trying to get a hold of you. And I was like, well, do you know what it's about? And they're like, no, we don't know what it's about. And so I thanked them. I shut the door, and I went upstairs, and my husband asked what that was about, and I said it has to do with Justin, and so he shook his head because we all knew Justin was fearless, lived on the edge, did his own thing. Um, and so when I called the number, the person on the other line picked up and said Greene County Coroner. And as you can imagine, as a mother, I thought I've dialed the wrong number. I don't know what they want with me. And he proceeded to tell me that he wanted to make sure who I was and that I was Justin's mom, and that he was so sorry to tell me this over the phone. And you can hear it in his voice. And I remember fading in and out of the conversation. But when he said my son Justin was gone, I was like, what do you mean gone? Like, where'd he go? And he just proceeded to tell me the story of what had happened. His roommate and him got into an argument. It started verbal, led to physical fighting, and then Justin had him up against a wall, and punches were being thrown. And the roommates pulled a gun out, put it to Justin's chest, and shot, which killed him. And they had been trying to find me because I had moved from our hometown to Columbus. I don't know if it was because my driver's license hadn't been changed yet or not, but this happened at 1:30 in the morning, and this was at 6:30 in the morning. So I'm frantic, thinking, how do I find my son? Where do I need to go, and how do I need to fix this? As a mother, that's what I'm thinking. And he just said, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. He's gone, and he's at the county morgue while they do it's pending, a murder investigation." And all this was like in and out, in and out. And I remember not knowing what to think or what to say. And that changed my life and who I was um, that very moment. And I will never be that same person ever again.
Yeah, those I've been on the other end of that, having to deliver those messages, so I empathize with you, and I'm really sorry that you had to go through it, especially that way. But the reality of life changing in an instant like that, especially as a parent, as you know, I'm a father, and to me, it would be devastating to get that kind of a message about one of my kids. And after you finally kind of, I won't say settled in, but had an opportunity to kind of let it sink in, what was your next step? How did you find your son?
So, once I realized, what was going on and how, um, you know, first, I just needed to get, like, I kept thinking to myself, I just need to get home. And what I mean by home is our hometown, Xenia, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hour drive. And I was like, how do I get home and fix this? It like wasn't registering to me that he was gone. It was like, how do I fix this? Like, how do I get home and fix this? And telling it through, I had to tell the story over and over to, of course, my oldest son and his father and parents and grandparents. And I put on this like mask and badge of courage is what I say to get through all those phone calls. And then it was like, okay, Hope, you got to take control. You got to get home. So then I was like jumping in the shower. And then as I'm in the shower, I just remember it's the way that I describe it. It's like the movies when the shower is just like tears are just blending in with the shower. And I get in my car and um, I don't drive, of course, home, but the phone starts ringing. People start finding out. I'm reliving this story over and over again on that whole hour and a half drive. And then as I get to my hometown, people start arriving and to my son's house. And it was almost like I had to relive it hundreds of times over and over, describing this story that I really didn't know much about. Like, all I knew was, they had an altercation. I don't know if there was a struggle with a gun. I don't know if Justin had any kind of weapon. I didn't know anything. And till later on that I was told that he didn't have any weapons on him whatsoever. It was just a verbal, physical altercation that turned violent once he pulled the gun. There was no hesitation, from what I understand. He just put it to get Justin's chest and shot. I don't know to this day if any words were exchanged, if Justin, said anything, or I don't know any of that, and I will never know any of that, because the only two people that know, one's in heaven and one's, probably not gonna, I'm never gonna talk to ever. In fact, I know I will probably never talk to that person. Um, but from there, it was
Uh,
just an emotional roller coaster.
Did you, if you don't mind me asking, did you attend the trial?
So one of the reasons that uh, this took such a turn on me was he was in for murder. He bonded out. His parents or somehow bonded him out. And then several months later, after the funeral, and we're talking maybe March or April, it went to a grand jury. And the grand jury allowed him to plead self defense, and there was never an indictment.
Mm.
So, because of the way that Justin apparently had him up against a wall, he said that there was no exit. There was no exit for him to go. There was no way that he could exit safely, so he thought his life was in danger, and that's what he pled with self defense. So, with that, the anger, the revengeful thinking, the hateful, the every possible emotion that you would have as a mother that someone took your son's life and played God, um, and will never have to feel those consequences or never have to experience the pain that I'm going through as a mother of not getting to see Justin grow, become somebody, get married, have kids, do all those things that, he's going to be able to do, um, was overwhelming. And I remember um, being at a place where I had two choices. And this is where everything changed for me. Leaving that courthouse after finding out that he was not going to be indicted, I remember I can be hateful and angry and resentful and lay in bed and nobody would challenge me, right? Nobody's going to challenge that. They're going to say, she lost her son. She has every right to be angry. She has every right to lay in bed for the rest of her life and give up. And nobody's going to change me. Nobody's going to make me say, get up, Hope, you got to go, right? And so I finally realized that I had the choice of to stay in that energy and to stay in that negativity and that revenge and hatred, or I can make the change to take all of that pain, all of that energy into something positive that was going to honor my son in a way that would reflect his life and the way that he lived and the way that I wanted him to be remembered versus the way that he was taken. And I knew that that man that took his life was not going to ever care about me, my thoughts, my feelings, my life, and Justin's life ever. Like, he may think about it, he may, it may weigh heavy on him, but at the end of the day, he is not going to make my life any different. Nor does he want to. Nor does he probably think about it. Or even feel, I don't know if he even has any kind of ill feelings about it whatsoever. So I knew in my heart that it was up to me to make that choice. And so that's when I knew that I had to be kind to myself and I had to be kind to others and I had to live in a way that was going to be honored, an honor to my son.
That's an interesting approach to getting a closure. Which have you got some form of closure in regard to all this?
I have forgiven him, and in my heart, I've forgiven him just because it's not. I'm not going to allow him to take away my happiness and my joy, which is one of the things that I feel like when we grieve, we don't think we deserve to be happy again. We don't feel like we are deserve to feel that joy, or we feel
Mhm.
guilty if we feel happiness. And one of the things that I needed to do was to let Justin know that I was not going to let him and his life go unnoticed or in vain because of someone else's actions. And so that's when I had to make the decision that I was going to live my life differently, positively, um, and serve, like I know
Right.
you do too, serve others. The feeling of doing that is way better than being sad and upset and lonely. And don't get me wrong, those days happen, but I allow them to be days, right? Not weeks, not months. A day. I allow myself that day. If it's the anniversary of Justin's death or if it's Justin's birthday, and I allow it to be that day, but I know that it can't consume me. And I have to do something with my life and to inspire others to think, you know what? Even though you went through this horrific experience, that should teach you, if anything, that this life is so precious that you need to go out and make it incredible for you. Like I have gone way beyond my wildest dreams, and it's because of Justin. That's the whole. If I didn't have this tragedy, I don't know what I would be doing today. I'd probably be taking things for granted, right? We do this one
We all do.
day, I'll start it then, I'll do it then, and you never really dream or dream big or try different things. And so I have Justin to thank for all that.
I would say that you got good closure. I'm not a doctor or a therapist or a psychologist, but coming from an individual that's experienced similar things to you, to what you've gone through, losing people in an instant and not being able to say goodbye or say I love you or anything like this. Yeah, you kind of, I know we all yearn for closure. And I think that, especially after any type of an incident, and in my professional career as well as my personal career, I can say that a good portion of individuals usually seek just. And when I say this, I'm not trying to trigger anything, but typically, I'm giving you kudos for what you've done because most people in that position want justice, as in I want to see that person in jail. I want to see them convicted. I want to see them sitting in a cell thinking about it every day, and that gives them closure. I participated in trials, many trials. I had a long career in law enforcement in regard
Right.
to people wanting that type of closure. You taken this to a different level, and I think that you've done it in a brilliant way because it allows you to, like you said, honor your son, honor that grief, honor that loss, and use it in order to motivate and inspire, like you said, other people to give them uh, tools to be able to move forward in life the way you have. So, from that perspective, well done.
Thank you. And let me just say that it's been a road, and it just didn't happen in an instant. There was
Right.
things that I wrote the attorney general, and I did, and I tried to figure out how to overturn a grand jury, which you can't do, apparently. And but in doing that process, it kept coming back to me that you what if you win a civil trial? Then what? Then what if he's not convicted? And
Right.
and one of the things that I'm grateful for is that I feel like my own personal view was that God knew that I couldn't go 2 years down the line and just like prolong my grief, because I think that's what happens when you have trials and you have things that last and you have to relive that story. Mine was sort of like, okay, this is it, this is what's happened, he's not going to pay for this, so what are you going to do about it, Hope? Where are you going to go? What do you need to do to make this about Justin and how to honor him versus having to relive? I feel um, so much pain for people that have to relive and go through trials that could last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, where they don't have that closure of this is the end, they're convicted, here they're going to jail, and now you can grieve. Because I think that's what happened for me, was like it was like, okay, this is how it ended, this is where it's going, now what are you going to do about it? So I think prolonging that, I think is really, really hard. And my heart goes out to people that have to relive that.
Yeah, it's a very difficult journey in regard to that for people that go through that because if, like you said, if they don't get a conviction, then what do you do?
Right.
And there are people that will look at the O.J. Simpson trial. You know, you could see in the just in the physical changes that took place in Nicole Simpson Brown's father during that time period because he never really got closure and
Yeah.
he just relented and nothing was closed for him. He didn't get the conviction. He didn't get what he needed to get in order to close, and he grieved for too many years, and it caused such a. I think you could see. I think you see it in his face. His hair turned white early, and his wrinkles came early, and we don't want wrinkles. We don't want white hair.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And
So
it's so hard. So hard.
Now I know you wrote a book about this, a memoir. Did the book come first and then Hope to Grief, or did Hope to Grief and then the book?
Grief to Hope was so basically what happened was right after the conviction was, there wasn't going to be no conviction. I knew that I wanted to do something. And I didn't know what that was. And so I kept asking God, like, guide me in a purpose, would you please? And he didn't work as fast as I needed him to, which I've
Yeah,
been told
I've been
that.
there. I've been there. It's like, what are
Right.
you waiting for?
Right, exactly. What's the hold up? And so it took me. I did some counseling, and then I joined some like a Christian based support group. And so I just remember there's a story that I was driving home from one of these groups, and I just asked God. And I'm not a very religious person, and I'm very uneducated when it comes to God, but going through these groups and going through what I have, I've learned a lot, and I still have a lot to learn. But I remember saying, just why, Justin? What do you want from me? What's my purpose? There's got to be a reason. And I remember hearing the words, and I'm not kidding you. I heard these words, and I tell everybody I'm not crazy. It was either on the radio or in my head. I don't know if it was God Himself, but He said, just be kind. And I talk about this in the book. And so I'm like, what the heck does that mean? I'm just I'm just supposed to be kind. Like, what is that's not a purpose. That's what I do now, right? And so I started volunteering, and I paid it forward. And I have a story that I was in line. I paid it for the guy behind me, and then as I drove up, the cashier's name was Justin, and I'm bawling because that was my son's name. And I'm thinking, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to just keep being kind. And so I thought I could speak, I could write a book, I could blog, and nothing ever seemed to really click. And I started a book, and then I put it down, and then I just kept volunteering and trying to serve, like we've talked about, serving, just giving, sharing my story, helping people. And then when COVID hit, that put a whole new layer on grief. And I remember thinking, I couldn't imagine not being able to see Justin, not having a funeral, not having, or having, people are dropping their husbands and spouses and kids off at the emergency room and not ever seeing them again or FaceTiming them. And then we're counting deaths by numbers on TV. I'm like, what if grandpa was like 3,855 in that county? I mean, it was just like, I couldn't imagine going through what I went through with Justin in the midst of COVID. So I think it put that other layer on it. And I thought, how can I help? And as you know, we talked about everybody was Zooming virtually. And it just came to me that I was like, wait a minute, I can have a support group meet virtually, and we can share our stories, be there for each other, talk about, what we're going through, not be so alone. They could join me in their pajamas, off camera, on camera, with coffee, with wine, whatever it took. They didn't have to leave. And so I remember sitting down and creating the Grief to Hope 7-week program. That's still in process today. We've had 7 sessions of 7 weeks over the past 2 years. I've had people all over the world. Just recently, somebody in Australia was on my program. It's completely free. We start a new one coming up January, and it's been an incredible experience. And Grief to Hope, the program, was born all because of COVID and what all happened with that. And then um, everybody kept saying, you need to write a book, Hope. You need to write a book. So I finally finished the book, and that was released July of this year.
What an interesting journey, especially I thinking back to what you when you started the conversation, the correlation that, and I'm a spiritual individual. I don't go to church. I'm going to be honest. I'm a Reformed Catholic, so I don't go to church, but I'm a very spiritual individual. You
Yeah.
you asked for help, and ironically enough, the person at the where you paid it forward was at the window was named Justin. So you decided to pay it forward at that time, and in doing so, there's a Justin. That's kind of cool, actually.
Yes, yes. I was crying so hard. That kid was probably like, "Lady, I don't know what your problem is." Yeah,
Uh,
I was like, "Oh my god,"
he's probably
and
going, our coffee's
yeah,
not that good.
right. It's not that, but yeah. And I was like, "Thank goodness he didn't buy for the office, like donuts and coffee for everybody that bill." But I was thinking to myself, "This is what I'm supposed to be doing," and I don't think I could afford to pay everybody every time I'm in the drive-through line, but I knew serving people in a way that can give them that glimpse of hope is what I needed to do. And I don't know anything about that person behind me that was receiving
Right.
that day. And I probably sped hugely. I mean, out of that parking lot, so they didn't see me. But I hope that whenever you create this kindness, it keeps moving forward. And that's the goal of Grief to Hope. Like, that's what I want to teach people, is that even in the midst of grief, you can still have hope. You can still have dreams. You can still um, live for your loved ones in a way that honors
Right.
them, and not their. I try to tell people it's what gets you out of bed every morning, and it's what motivates you to keep moving forward. And whatever that is, if it's writing a book, if it's just going to work, or if it's your
Yeah.
kids. Like I say all the time, who experience mothers and fathers who experience the loss of their spouse, they have to keep going on. They have to keep making lunches. They have to keep getting out of
Yeah.
bed. They have to keep, there's that purpose. And it's so hard if you don't have that purpose. So you have to find that purpose that just drives you, and it really is, it can be just an amazing experience.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point in regard to purpose. Um, how do I present this? In any situation where we lose something, whether it be a job, a home, a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, not necessarily in death, but up
Mhm.
into and including loss in the form of death, we look back on the purpose that we had been doing and the purpose that we thought our life was in at that time. And sometimes we're presented with an opportunity to reinvent that purpose. And I think that from what our discussion has shown and from what I've been able to see, you were able to brilliantly take that and recreate purpose in your life so that you moved that forward, like you said, in a very positive way. You created this, as you said, 7-step program
7 week
or 7-week
support
program.
program. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the 7-week program. Like, how does it work? Do you come on each week, and anybody can come in? I know you said that it's free, which was amazing. There needs to be a way to help you to cover those costs, because I know that it's got to cost you somewhere. Um, but walk us through that. What happens when you go into like a week one, week two, week three kind of a thing?
Absolutely, I love that.
Oops, just
And
a
the
second.
way that I tell this is
One
the way
second.
that yeah.
Actually went there, so I'm going to ask you. Tell me about the 7-week program.
Okay, perfect. So one of the things that Grief to Hope is the greatest things is, I tell everybody when I say it's free, everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, it's free! How do you cover that?" And I'm like, people have golf that they pay for. They pay big bucks to play golf. I do this because this means the world to me. This is what honors my son. So The support program that I offer is it's 7 weeks, and the first week it's grief to hope. The first week is an introduction, sort of like what I've done here, sort of provide my why, what happened to me, my story, why, I created Grief to Hope. I ask for people to introduce themselves, but nobody is required to ever speak. They don't have to come off camera. It's a very casual atmosphere. If you don't want to speak, you don't have to. I don't call on anybody. We have a lot of people that rejoin each each session after session, or each program after program, because it's a repeat. And then once that introduction call, it's an hour long. We do it on Thursday nights via Zoom. The next week we come in and we spell the word grief. So G would be the second week, which is gift of time. So we talk about, the main topics are like, how has time helped? How has time not helped? What do people expect from you? Like, do they tell you to hurry up? Do they want you to get back to normal? What does time all mean? And then we speak to that for an hour. We open it up for discussion as well once we're done, if we're done talking about time, for anything that's going on for the week, or if anybody's struggling with something. We want to make sure that we talk about that, and everybody, gets to know, each other in that way. If they want to introduce themselves, share their story. And then I always end with a quote. And these quotes all of them are in my book. I think I have over 60, but I've created quotes to go with each session, and I will create a new one for every session going forward, as long as I can. And then we go to R for grief, and that's receive help. How do you ask for help? How do you receive help? Is there something that you didn't like, or you didn't experience, or you thought people should be providing certain amount of help and you're not getting it? Or how do you take the pride out of the receive help kind of factor? And then we go to I is inspire, which is not usually associated with grief, but it's just like we talked about. You have to have something that inspires you every day to get out of bed. And you have to find what that is. And it may be something as simple as your children needing you need to get up, you need to make lunches, whatever that may be. Or it could be as big as writing a book that inspires you, or running a marathon, or whatever it could be. E is for expectations. And what do you expect out of people when you're grieving? What do they expect from you? And a lot of times people have the expectation that grief only lasts a certain amount of time, and then it's over and done with and you're back to normal. And that's not the case. It's an ongoing for the rest of your life, and it can spark, it could dim, it could be like a hurricane, it can be it could be a sprinkle. It just never ends. But what do people expect, and what do you expect from people? And then F is feel everything. And I love this one because it sort of came into like a show and tell kind of thing, where we bring pictures and share stories and talk about memories, and we ask, what's their favorite topping on a pizza, or what was their favorite TV show, and we just get to say their name, and it feels so good to them, and you see their smiles. Because when people ask me about Justin, I'll be the first one to smile and tell you everything I can about him. And then the last session in the course, or in the program, is to hope. And it's basically, what's your next steps? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And it's usually linked to that inspiration, but I also look at it as, depending on how long it's been in your grief. Like, we have people it's been 13 years, we have people it's been 13 weeks, we have people that's been 30 years. And we don't judge. We have utmost respect for anybody that's going through grief, whether it's grandma had an amazing life, but it's still grief, to a tragic event such as mine, where my son was killed, in a traumatic way. So we don't judge that. We don't say your grief is worse than my grief, or anything like that. We're all in this together. So with To Hope, it's What's that next step? And it could be something as simple as I want to go through their things, or I want to walk up to that grave and like literally walk to it, not just sit in the car. It can be something as simple and as little as you want it to be, or as big as you want it to be. But the goal of Grief to Hope is getting you to know what that next step is and move forward. And then we take a break, and then we come back, and sometimes it's 5 weeks, sometimes it's 7 weeks, and we do that program all over again. And people join several times. They can join one session, they can join any session that they want, they can come and go as they please. It's just there, and it's open, and it's something that I hope helps, and makes you not feel so alone.
It's a brilliant step program. I'm very happy that you created that environment for people to move forward. If somebody, what would you think, what would you say would be the first thing someone needs to do if something, if they get that knock on the door, they get that life changed in an instant phone call or the knock on the door? Because I know that you had some issues. You immediately had to start making phone calls for some things and so forth. And, you know, you didn't really have help in the beginning. What would you say the first step is?
The very first step is to take a minute, step back. One of the things that I think happens in a funeral is and when tragedy strikes is we feel like we have to hurry up and rush, and we have to tell everybody this, and we have to make these plans, and we have to get pictures, and we have to have the best of the funeral, and we have to stand for 3 hours at a viewing because there are so many people. It's take that step back and do what's right for you, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to be living with the the all of those memories and all of those actions that you took after that event. There were so many things that I wish I could have done differently after Justin's passing, but I was in such a mode that I was worried about everybody else, that I was trying to hurry up and get it taken care of so that everybody else's life could go back to normal. And then I stood, and what I say is like a cold, hard rain, thinking, what the hell am I going to do now? Right? Everybody goes back to their normal life. I've hurried, I've gotten this done, I've taken care of everything. Now it's just me. And so your first thing is just to stop and think about what you're doing and make sure it's the right thing for you.
That's a perfect first step. Take a breath. Stop and take a
Yeah.
breath. Um,
Yes.
your within your book, are there some steps or some things that people can do within the book? Let's talk about the book and
Absolutely.
your.
Yeah, absolutely. So within my book, I go through this program. I talk about exactly what it's about. You can absolutely utilize that. I am working on a workbook to go along with the program, because I think it's important to write things down. So one of the greatest things with Grief to Hope is I tell my story. I tell it. It's raw. And I'm going to be honest with you. The most reviews that I've got is that it is intense, and it is intense. It is. I do not make. I don't sugarcoat anything. I talk about it because it needs to be talked about, and so I've had several people say it is so intense I had to put it down and then come back, and that's okay. But it's real and it's raw and it's transparent, and that's what I wanted the book to be. I did not want to put fluff in it because grief. There's nothing glorious about grief, right? So work yourself through. The best thing that I can say with the book is like get to the point where we talk about the program and see if things, if you reflect and say, oh, that happened to me, or yes, that would help. or, mark it off, highlight it, do whatever. You can walk yourself through this program, even with the book. I mean, I walk you through all the steps with the book, and to have that, um, as a side pocket to say, read the quotes at the end of the book. I did 52 quotes, inspirational quotes, have them once a week, read it. But just, yeah, you can guide through the whole program with just the book.
And the name of your book,
Grief to Hope.
for those individuals that are listening and not watching. And I know that you've got a website that people can visit you.
Absolutely. It's Grief to Hope, www.grief2hopesupport.com. And you can go on there. You can find my book link. You can find all about the program. You can find all about me. You can see a beautiful picture of my son on the back, which I love. And the greatest thing about the book is my 10-year-old granddaughter took the photo that is on the cover. She is so
cool.
proud of that.
Very cool.
Yeah,
very
so it's
cool.
a beautiful photo out my backyard. And so she took this photo, and I was like, I think Nana's going to use that. So she's super excited. Her name's on Amazon. She loves it.
Very cool. Very cool. And then get the book on Amazon as well. And then there'll be links within your website. And I'll make sure all that stuff's in the show notes as well for those individuals that are looking to connect with you, that are listening, and to make sure they know where to go and where to get your book. This is one more thing before you go. So before we go, do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to share?
I love this quote that I created, and I'm going to read it. It says, wake up each day with hope in your heart, fire in your soul, power in your mind, and the value of today. You earned it.
Brilliant words of wisdom. Thank you for sharing those words of wisdom. Thank you for being on the show and sharing your journey with me. I really appreciate it. And again,
Absolutely.
kudos for where you have come from and where you're at now. Please continue to spread that positivity. I think you're doing a really good job.
I appreciate it so much, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of One More Thing Before You Go. Check out our website at beforeyougopodcast.com. You can find us as well as subscribe to the program and rate us on your favorite podcast listening platform.